Imagine a 400-year-old empire, once a titan of the ancient world, collapsing in just a handful of years. How did the mighty Persian Sassanid Empire, with all its grandeur, fall to a disciplined force of desert fighters? Their final emperor, Yazdard III, was only 8 years old when he took the throne in 632, a stark sign of internal chaos. In this video, we're breaking down the Islamic conquest of Persia with stunning animated maps and battle reconstructions. You'll see how the underdog, Rashidan Caliphate, outsmarted a giant. Stick around to uncover the sharp strategies that rewrote history. And tell us in the comments which moment shocks you most. Let's turn our attention to the Sassanid Empire and set the stage for how this ancient giant was teetering on the edge of collapse. You wouldn't believe how a powerhouse that ruled for over 400 years could look so invincible on the outside while rotting from within. Persia was a name that once echoed with power across the known world, but by the early 7th century, it was a fractured mess, practically inviting disaster. Stick with me as we uncover the cracks that run deeper than anyone could have imagined. Picture this, it's the early 600s, and Persia is limping out of the brutal Byzantine Sassanid War that raged from 600 to 2628 CE. Decades of conflict drained their treasury and morale, and in the 4 years that followed, 10 short-lived kings ruled between 628 and 632, leaving a shattered, overtaxed population and a fractured military. The royal coffers weren't just empty. They were a sad reminder of better days, scraped clean to fund wars with little to show for it. The people, farmers, merchants, everyday folks were fed up, grumbling about a system that seemed to care more about battles than their survival. Now, let's zoom in on their mighty military. The Persian army, feared for centuries, was stretched thinner than ever. Soldiers were scattered across vast territories, trying to hold on to crumbling borders with outdated gear and rock-bottom morale. The leadership wasn't much better. Royal court was a nest of infighting, with nobles more interested in stabbing each other in the back than defending the empire. Chaos at the top meant chaos everywhere else, and it showed in every tired soldier and every neglected outpost. Here's where it gets even messier. In 632, their new emperor, Yazdard III, took the throne, and he's just a kid, barely old enough to understand the crown on his head. Imagine a child trying to command a sinking ship, while seasoned advisors and generals bicker over who's really in charge. There was no steady hand to guide Persia out of the storm, just a leadership vacuum that screamed weakness. It's the kind of situation that makes an empire look like easy prey. From the outside, Persia still had the glitter of towering cities and a legendary reputation. But inside, it was all fractures and flaws, a textbook case of a power stretched too far and hollowed out by its own mistakes. Historical accounts lay it bare. After the war with Byzantium ended in 628, they didn't recover. Territories slipped away, governors in far-off regions started eyeing independence, and loyalty crumbled like old stone. Even their state religion, Zoroastrianism, once a unifying force tied to the elite, had fewer active adherents among ordinary Persians, leaving a spiritual gap that could be exploited. You wouldn't believe how fast a giant can falter when it's this broken. Persia was a wounded colossus, its grand facade hiding a crumbling core. Every overtaxed peasant, every disloyal noble, every exhausted soldier was another crack in the foundation. And as these weaknesses piled up, the stage was set for a dramatic shift. Something was stirring just beyond their borders, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, let's shift our gaze to a rising force that is about to change everything. We're talking about the Rashidan Caliphate and their bold vision to challenge an empire as massive as Persia. You might picture them as underdogs, but these warriors had a plan so precise it could dismantle a giant. While the Sassanids were stumbling, this new power was forging ahead with unshakable purpose and a strategy that was pure genius. Stick around, because this story of grit and cunning is just getting started. Imagine this, it's 632 CE, and Umar steps up as caliph, leading a newly united Arab force out of the Arabian Peninsula. This wasn't an overnight transformation. After the Ridda Wars of 632 to 633 CE, they consolidated Arabia, bringing tribes together under one banner with fresh resources and a shared goal. United by Islam, their faith wasn't just a belief, it was a bond that turned them into a focused machine. Their army was small, compared to Persia's endless ranks, but size didn't matter. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for with fierce determination and razor-sharp thinking. Picture a compact, driven crew staring down a colossus and saying, "We've got this." Here's where it gets intense. Umar and his commanders didn't just charge in blindly. They studied the Sassanids with an almost obsessive focus, mapping out every weakness they could find. They tracked Persian supply routes, spotted under-defended border towns, and noted which massive fortresses to avoid. Historical records reveal They dug into Persian logistics, history, and even cultural elements to understand their enemy completely. It was like they were building a blueprint of the empire's flaws, planning every move with deadly precision before even setting foot on the battlefield. Let's talk about their tactics. These Arab fighters were experts in desert warfare, turning the brutal sands into their greatest ally. Lightly armed, they moved with speed, striking vulnerable points and vanishing before the Persian heavy cavalry could react. They didn't just fight, they outmaneuvered. Commanders like Khalid ibn al-Walid used deception to devastating effect, changing banners at night and raising dust clouds with cavalry to fake larger numbers and rattle Persian morale. It was the kind of strategy that kept their enemies off balance, always wondering where the next hit would come from. You wouldn't believe the raw ingenuity of these warriors. They didn't have vast resources or heavy gear, just an intimate knowledge of the terrain and a drive that wouldn't quit. The desert wasn't a barrier. It was their weapon, wearing down a Persian army too cumbersome to adapt. Every quick raid on a supply line, every ambush on an unsuspecting outpost, chipped away at the empire's strength. It's a masterclass in turning what looks like a disadvantage into a game-changer, against an opponent too arrogant to see the threat. Here's the key takeaway to hold on to. The Rashidan Caliphate wasn't just a lucky band of fighters. They were a calculated force, ready to exploit every crack in Persia's crumbling armor. Their unity, planning, and adaptability made them a danger far beyond their size. And as their strategies took shape, the moment was coming when theory would meet reality in explosive confrontations that would echo through history. Let's zoom into the battlefields, where history was rewritten with blood and brilliance. We're breaking down the key clashes between the Rashidan Caliphate and the Sassanid Empire in a true clash of titans. You've got a fading giant facing off against a determined underdog, and these fights weren't just skirmishes, they were the moments that shattered an empire's legacy. Stick around, because you're about to see how strategy can topple raw might. Picture the scene. Two armies locked in a stare-down on the dusty plains of modern-day Iraq. The Persians bring a staggering force between 60,000 and 100,000 soldiers in 636, side-decked out with heavy cavalry in shining armor and massive war elephants that could crush anything in their path. It's a terrifying sight, enough to make your heart skip. Then there's the Arab army, a lean 30,000 strong under the Rashidan flag. With light gear, fast moves, and even faster thinking, they're outnumbered, outgunned, but they've got a spark of something dangerous. Can you sense the imbalance? It's like watching a lumbering beast square up against a swarm of hornets. Now, let's focus on the Battle of Al-Qadisiyyah in 636 CE. The Arab commander, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, is a tactical mastermind, facing a Persian force at least double his size, under General Rostam Roxad, who's got every reason to feel confident with such numbers. This isn't a quick brawl, it's a grueling 4-day slog, pushing both sides to their breaking point. The Arabs don't just stand there trading punches. They use the terrain like a secret weapon, baiting the Persians into spots where their huge army becomes a clumsy mess. Here's the gritty detail of how they pulled it off. The Arabs tricked Persian units into traps, exploiting uneven ground to disrupt their tight formations. They dart in and out, dragging out the fight to exhaust the heavily armored Persian soldiers and their plotting elephants. At first, those war beasts stopped the Arabs dead in their tracks, but Sa'd's men adapt quickly. Arab veterans from the Levant taught their companions how to neutralize war elephants, turning Persia's great beasts into a tactical liability. And the mind games, ruthless. They kick up huge dust clouds with their horses to fake reinforcements, fraying Persian nerves as they think they're surrounded. Historical records expose the Persians' fatal blunders. Rostam orders his army to cross a river without a solid retreat plan. When things go wrong, his troops are trapped, and hundreds drown in a desperate scramble to escape. It's a catastrophic mistake that hands the Arabs a massive edge. The Persian heavy cavalry, built to crush enemies like the Romans, can't match the nimble Arab horsemen and archers who hit and disappear. It's like swinging a club in the shadows, pointless and exhausting. Animated battle maps will show how the Arabs lured Persian units into encirclement, transforming numbers into a strategic disadvantage. What seemed like Persian strength, those endless ranks, turns into a cage when they can't move. Their arrogance, the belief they'd steamroll this small enemy, becomes their downfall. It's not just a defeat, it's a gut punch on their home soil. Here's the moment to soak in. Al-Qadisiyyah isn't just a win scratched into history. It's the battle that cracked Persia's myth of invincibility wide open, leaving their forces demoralized and their confidence in tatters. The impact of this loss rippled far beyond the battlefield, setting the stage for even bolder moves by a force that refused to stop. Let's shift gears to the next critical strike that would pierce the very soul of an empire. We're talking about the Arab conquest of Ctesiphon, the glittering capital of the Sassanid Empire. Fresh off their battlefield triumphs, the Rashidan forces zeroed in on a target that wasn't just a city, it was the ultimate symbol of Persian power. Known to the Arabs as Ctesiphon sat proudly along the Tigris River, brimming with wealth and history. Capturing it wasn't just about territory, it was about proving that nothing in Persia was untouchable. Stick with me, because this changes the game completely. Imagine this, it's March of 637, and the Arab army, led by General Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, is closing in on Ctesiphon after their hard-earned victories. You're looking at a city that radiates imperial might, with sprawling palaces and gardens that have been the heartbeat of Sassanid rule for centuries. But beneath the surface, it's a shell of its former self. Endless wars have bled its defenses dry. The once imposing walls are cracked and neglected, with no resources left to patch them up. Inside, the Persians brace for the inevitable, their strength sapped and their spirit faltering. Can you see a city so steeped in glory, yet so vulnerable to collapse? Now, sense the unease as the Persians struggle to protect their treasured capital. Their army is in disarray, broken by prior losses, with troops scattered across the empire trying to hold crumbling borders. Morale is non-existent. The people of Ctesiphon, nobles and commoners alike, are crushed under heavy taxes and years of suffering, leaving them with no will to resist. Social divides, especially between the elite and the poor, only deepen the cracks. Historical records lay it bare. The Persian garrison was undertrained and ill-supplied after decades of war, barely able to muster a coherent defense. It's a capital ripe for the taking, exposed by its own logistical collapse. Here's where the Arab brilliance comes into play. They don't rush in with reckless attacks, hoping for a fast win. Instead, they play it smart. Sa'd's forces encircle Ctesiphon, severing every road and river route that delivers food and supplies. They isolate the city, turning it into a trapped fortress with no lifeline. This siege isn't about raw power, it's about patience, grinding down the enemy until they break. Each day, the pressure mounts, grain dwindles, water grows scarce, and murmurs of giving up spread like wildfire. You wouldn't believe how this slow stranglehold forced a proud capital to its knees with minimal bloodshed. In March 637, following a 3-month blockade, Ctesiphon capitulated, marking a symbolic and strategic blow. Here's a staggering detail to chew on. When Ctesiphon fell, the Arabs stumbled into a treasure hoard so vast, it took days to tally. We're talking mountains of gold, dazzling jewels, and artifacts collected by Sassanid rulers over generations. Abundant spoils from Ctesiphon replenished the Caliphate's treasury, enabling further campaigns into Persia. It wasn't just wealth, it was a loud statement. Taking this city stripped the empire of its pride, along with its riches. Can you imagine the boost for an army of desert fighters walking into such a bounty? You wouldn't believe how swiftly the news of Ctesiphon's fall echoed across Persia. It wasn't merely a lost city. It rocked the empire to its core, signaling that the end was near. Emperor Yazdard III fled eastward, scrambling to muster any remaining loyalty. Here's the moment to hold on to. Capturing this capital was the wound that bled Sassanid rule dry, proving no fortress was safe. But even with their heart torn out, could a fractured empire find the strength to fight back one last time? Let's turn our focus to the last desperate chapter of a fading empire. We're diving into the Battle of Nahavand, Persia's final stand against the relentless Arab advance. After losing their capital and vital strongholds, the Sassanid Empire was barely clinging to life, yet they staked everything on one last fight. Known as the victory of victories to the Arabs, this clash in December 642 CE marked the end of a 400-year dynasty. You're about to see how even a vast army can crumble when outmatched by cunning. Picture the scene. Emperor Yazdard III, still a young man, is frantically gathering every fighter he can muster. Near Nahavand, in what's now western Iran, he assembles a staggering 100,000 troops under his chosen general, Mardin Shah. It's a mix of battle-worn veterans and eager volunteers from Persia's dwindling territories. You've got to imagine this young ruler, far from ready to command, trying to inspire a broken nation for one final push. The goal is simple, but daunting: repel the Arabs and reclaim a sliver of lost glory. The numbers look promising, but the cracks in their resolve are impossible to ignore. Now feel the tension as the Arabs arrive, led by General Al-Numan ibn Muqarrin, with a force of just 30,000. They're outnumbered 3-1, staring down a wall of desperate Persians with everything on the line. It seems like the Sassanids should dominate through sheer size alone, but wars aren't decided by headcounts. The Arabs have been outsmarting their foes at every turn, and they're not about to stop now. Can you feel the mismatch brewing? A massive, lumbering force against a sharp, agile enemy. Historical accounts expose the Persian shortcomings in stark detail. Mardin Shah and his commanders rely on their numbers, hoping to overpower through brute strength. But after years of defeats, they're out of fresh tactics. There's no innovation, just a straightforward charge with no backup. Plan morale is shattered. Many soldiers are exhausted, disillusioned by an empire that's been shrinking before their eyes. They've got the manpower, but not the spirit or strategy to wield it. It's like sending a huge crowd into a fight with no direction, banking on chaos to somehow save the day. The Arabs, on the other hand, have deception down to a science. Al-Nu'man uses feigned retreats to lure the Persians into reckless pursuits. Imagine it like baiting a bear into a trap. Thus, Sassanids rush forward, their lines stretch thin, and gaps open wide. Then the Arabs strike back, ambushing isolated units in deadly encirclements. Before the Persians can regroup, they're surrounded, unable to fight as a unit. What was once a mighty army becomes a chaotic mess, tripping over itself in panic. It's a collapse that happens almost too fast to grasp. You wouldn't believe how swiftly that enormous force unraveled. Visual maps on screen will break it down how. The Arabs split them apart, trapped them, and dismantled them piece by piece. It's not just a defeat, it's a massacre. Persia lost all its top marshals, dissolving any hope of raising a new army. Their last chance slipped away in a single devastating blow, leaving nothing to rebuild from. Here's the harsh truth to sit with. Nahavand was the breaking point. The moment a centuries-old empire vanished for good. After the loss, Yazdard fled eastward, seeking any remaining allies in far-off lands. Within 2 years, core regions like Hamadan, Azerbaijan, and Fars fell with little resistance. This wasn't just the end of a battle, it was the end of an era. So, what does a collapse this massive teach us about the tides of history? Let's unpack that next. Let's wrap this epic tale with some final reflections on the fall of Persia. What's the big takeaway from an empire's collapse that reshapes the world? Here's the core of it. The Islamic conquest proves that sharp strategy paired with deep internal rot can topple even the mightiest giants. Was it primarily Persian exhaustion and political chaos, or the Arabs' tight strategy? Share your thoughts below. Consider this. By 644 CE, within 2 years of Nahavand, provinces from Azerbaijan to Fars had capitulated. History turned fast. If you found this useful, like and subscribe for more history deep dives. This story marks just the beginning of an era that changed everything.